Reflection is an essential part of my goal-getting process, mainly because it can be so beneficial in helping us not only notice the progress we've been making, but also plan for making more progress in future. For me, a helpful reflection process is going to highlight the progress I've made, acknowledge the challenges I've faced, consider the goal-getting tactics that I've been using and whether they've been helpful, all in the hopes that I can maintain or further my progress going forward. In this video, we're going to go through how I reflect on my goals at the end of each month or cycle so that I can actually achieve those goals, but most importantly, how I do it in a way that is simple, manageable, and actually useful. This is the general structure that my end of month reflection takes. So we have a spot for wins, memories, challenges, learnt, next cycle, and excited for. Of these 6 sections, 4 of them are what I consider to be essential for my goal getting, and 2 of them are more so just nice to have. We're going to look through each of those in detail as I go through and fill out my reflection for the month, but what's important to consider first is where are you going to put your reflection? I like to do these in my everyday journal because this is where a lot of my action taking happens. I'll write things down on my daily to-do list and I'll summarize them in my weekly priorities lists. These ones are all actions related to my goals for this current quarter, but whether you're taking it down in a physical format or in a digital typed up format, what I find is most important is that they are written down. While we can do this reflective process in our heads, by writing it down, it forces us to bring our thoughts together in a way that is coherent, which means we can actually then make sense of the information and do something with it moving forward. One of the biggest gripes that people often have with reflection is that it feels just kind of like busy work. We're writing stuff down, looking back on things that have happened, but we don't necessarily use that information for anything constructive. I am not a fan of things that are pointless or time wasting, which means that when I do my reflective process, I need to get valuable information out of it, otherwise I just won't do it. That means that the purpose for my reflective process is very much thinking about what can I learn from these past happenings that I can take forward with me and make more progress in future, and actually achieve my goals. As said, you do not have to write it down in a notebook like I'm doing, but writing it down just helps you to solidify those thoughts, make sense of them, and makes the process more useful. The first section that I'm starting with here is wins, and this is one that I do consider to be essential for any goal-getting reflection. All too often, we can fall victim to our negativity biases and just thinking about all the things we haven't done or haven't achieved, or the progress that we haven't made. I like to start by thinking about the wins that I've had from the past month when I'm doing my reflection, mainly to put me in a more positive headspace, to acknowledge the fact that, sure, maybe I haven't made as much progress as I would have liked to, but I have still done things, even if it was small. When thinking about your wins, they don't have to be huge, monumental things. It doesn't have to be, I completely finished this goal, it is completely checked off my task list and I am done with it. It can just be, I took one small step towards something. Often, to remind myself of the fact that small progress is still progress, I will intentionally try to write something small down on my wins list. Make that the first thing that's on there to kind of set the tone. That doesn't mean that every single thing I write on the list is going to be absolutely minuscule, but it just does well to acknowledge that progress is being made even if it's little. Another way that I also help combat my negativity bias when it comes to doing my reflection process is making the wins section, or progress section if you want to call it that, just a little bit bigger than the challenges section. In fact, often I'll make it a fair bit bigger, because while I do want to acknowledge our challenges when we get up to that, I don't want to dwell on them too much. I want to have a space to say, yes, challenges did happen and this is how they hindered me, but I don't want to get into a mindset where I'm just using all of those as excuses and not giving myself any credit for the work that has been done. In thinking about the wins section though, some of the ways that you can elaborate on this, or questions you can ask yourself, are things like, what felt like an accomplishment from the last month? What action did I take on my goals, even if small? What things have been completed or partially completed? Or what evidence do I have that I'm making progress on my goals? You don't have to use all of these elaborated questions to help you in this section, but really it's just about acknowledging the stuff that you have done that's going well and the progress you can be proud of. The next section I'm filling in here though is the memory space. This one isn't something I consider essential for goal getting, but it is just a nice to have. I like to look back on the happenings from the month and consider the stuff that I want to remember, because while I have that information captured on my calendar or in my daily logs or weekly logs, depending on what it is, having it all collated in one set space in a reflection layout is something that I really value. Sometimes the things that I write down on here can also be acknowledged in the wins or challenges sections, just depending on what they are. For instance, if one of the memories that you have from the month is a really big event that you were planning, then maybe that got in the way of doing other goal work, or work in other areas of your life that you were hoping to make progress on. We can essentially think of the memory space as some supplementary information that provides extra context to the rest of the reflection. With those two sections done though, then it's time to move on to challenges. Technically speaking, I don't always go through one after the other. I just let my thoughts take me where they will, because oftentimes if I think of a particular win, then I might think of a challenge that was associated with that progress. If I think of a memory, I might consider something that's coming up for next cycle, which is a section we'll get onto in a bit. But thinking about the challenges, the intention here is not to dwell on them and get all negative and feel sorry for ourselves or beat ourselves up because we didn't get stuff done, but challenges are still important to acknowledge. When I'm thinking about challenges in the context of a reflection for my goals though, I'm specifically thinking about the challenges that held me back or hindered me from making goal progress. There are always going to be challenges in life, but not all of them are actually actively working against our goals. So I do try and limit my thinking just to those ones. This is also another thing that I use to help me stop getting into a negative headspace and just dwelling on everything that's wrong or not so great in life. I'm really just thinking about those ones that mean I'm not making as much progress on my goals as I would like to. Often we also find that if you do this reflection process repeatedly, so at the end of each month or the end of each cycle, sometimes the same challenges come up repeatedly. By having them written down in either our journal or a digital space, we can go back through those previous reflections and double acknowledge the fact that the challenge has happened and hopefully plan some ways forward. By stating what the challenge is, that gives us a problem to be solved, because although the challenges are going to happen, that doesn't mean that we just have to lie down and take it. There are going to be things that we can do either to avoid those challenges in future or mitigate the impact of them. So by acknowledging them and writing them down, we can plan better ways forward. What I find is also quite helpful in the challenges space is to not only state what the challenge was, but also identify how or why it hindered you. It's good to provide detail or context here rather than just saying, oh, I didn't have enough time to work on my goals. Maybe the real issue wasn't so much not enough time, but that I didn't acknowledge that I had other things that were happening on my calendar, stuff that would really have taken away from my goal getting time, that because I didn't acknowledge for those things in my goal planning, it meant that when I got underway, the time I could have dedicated to goal work was already dedicated to other things. Rather than saying something like, I felt demotivated, I'll explore that a little further, unpack it, and consider what was making me feel demotivated. Was it because the next action step was too big? Was it because something was unclear or too challenging? Really, we just want to do future us a favor by unpacking that a little bit further so that we can get better information out of it. After acknowledging the challenges though, then it's time to think about what we have learnt about ourselves as goal getters across the last month. Now this might be another section where we have some repeat information from month to month. Sometimes we have to learn the same lesson multiple times before it sticks, or before we do something about it. But here I like to look at my challenges and my wins in particular and consider what have I learnt about myself in terms of strategies that do or don't work for me when it comes to my goals. Have I learnt that maybe I need to break things down even more than I initially thought so that I can make better progress? Have I learnt that there are particular types of action steps that I just routinely put off versus ones that I always find easy and I get them done first? Maybe I've learnt that the particular way I responded to a challenge was helpful or further hindered me, but the learnings here are very much going to depend on the goals you're working on and the challenges you faced, the stuff you already know about yourself as a goal getter, and the stuff you're still exploring. This is essentially the space that starts to make our reflection process a lot more helpful though. By solidifying the things that we've been learning about ourselves in terms of goal getting and goal setting, we can use that information to make more informed and better choices moving forward. And our next section is all about that. Mine's titled Next Cycle because I do cyclic planning, but you might want to call this next month or next quarter, next season, depending on what unit of time you like to use. But this is where I'm going to start to outline some of the things that I either want to do next month to make more progress, or some of the goal getting tactics that I want to try to make goal progress easier. Some of them are going to be one-off action steps that I want to do, things that I can effectively write on a checklist and just do once, whereas others are going to be more like routine based or habit based, or things that I want to build into my goal getting system. For instance, one of the things that I wrote down on a recent reflection was that I was finding it hard to get out of bed in the morning because my house was cold and I just wanted to stay cozy. By taking the time to reflect on that though, then when I did my next cycle plan, I could put in an action step related to setting up an automatic timer on my heater to turn on, heat up my house so that getting out of bed was just that little bit easier. Just like every other reflection section, it really depends on what things you're working on, what things you've learned and the challenges you've faced as to what you're going to write in this next cycle or next month spot. But when I'm filling this in, I'm very much looking at that learnt section, thinking about what have I learnt and how can I apply this moving forward. This next cycle spot is going to become an action plan for myself. It's how I take the information from the reflective process and apply it moving forward. The section we have at the bottom here, called Excited For, isn't necessarily an essential part of a goal-getting reflection, but is another nice to have, especially for putting us in a more positive mindset. If you found the last month or cycle to be really challenging, you haven't made as much progress as you hoped for, and you're just feeling a little bit down, intentionally giving yourself some things to be excited for, stuff that's coming up, whether it's related to your goals or just life in general, can help us end the reflective process on a high note. As said, it isn't integral to doing a goal-getting reflection, but I do find it to be a positive part to include. As said at the start, I want this to be an easy and informative process for you. I want it to be something that doesn't feel like a burden to do and something that feels worthwhile. So as you're going through, make sure that you're writing it down in an easy to capture method. You don't have to use your best words or your most perfect sentence structures. We just want to get the ideas out there in a physical or typed up digital format so you can make sense of the information and use it in ways that are going to help you. I like to use this simplified structure to make my cyclic reflection nice and easy. And while in this video we've looked at monthly or cyclic reflection, there are also other types of reflection that I'll use on different timeframes. We talk more about those over in our course Epic Goals, which takes you through all of the steps that I use to brainstorm, set, plan, and get my goals. If you are curious about that one, there's a link in the description box for more information. But otherwise, I hope your next reflection feels meaningful and informative, and thanks for watching.